My wife was on a business trip and suddenly called me in the middle of the night. I thought she missed me, but after answering, I vaguely heard that something was off with her voice. My wife pleaded, "Honey, put it on speaker." The next moment, my heart was shattered. "Honey, I'm talking to you. Why aren't you answering?" Lina's voice came again. I like the way she calls me, but this time it was clearly off. At that moment, my mind went completely blank, and I didn't know how to respond. My wife was on a business trip this time, saying she had to entertain clients to secure an order. She told me to go to bed first if it got too late and not to wait for her, but I couldn't help worrying. I sent her a WeChat message, asking her to video call me as soon as she got back to the hotel. But I never expected that while I was waiting in bed, the call I received would be like this. I was completely confused by Lina's behavior, and even suspected she was drunk and had called the wrong person. "Speak up." I can't stand that trailing voice, like an invisible needle piercing my heart painfully. "Darling, what are you doing?" "Nothing much, just wanted to give you a call." I brought the phone up in front of me and looked at it again, confirming it was my wife's number, no mistake. The contact was saved as dear. But why, after all? What exactly is she doing over there? Could it be that? These questions surfaced in my mind, but I had no answers. To be honest, I dare not think about it. "Honey, what are you doing?" Why does it sound a bit off? Although I tried hard to restrain myself from overthinking, my wife's voice just now kept echoing in my mind. "Really?" I bit my lip hard, not allowing a single sound to escape. The next moment, I seemed to hear my wife's breathing falter. "You have to know, she was at a hotel out of town." How could I not? I clearly heard it. "No, what did you hear?" the wife said dismissively. I was about to lose my mind. Was she taking me for a fool? Anyone could hear it clearly, so why was she hiding it? "I heard you, hey." For some reason, the words were on the tip of my tongue, but I just couldn't say them. "Honey, why is your voice so quiet over there? How about you put it on speaker?" The wife seemed to be pleading. Even if I have a big heart, I still can't put the call on speakerphone. Am I looking for trouble? "Honey, say something. What are you doing?" If she were in front of me, I would definitely slap her first. "Lina, I should be the one asking you." I almost shouted it out, hoarse and desperate. I thought this would stop it, but it was quite the opposite. "Ethan, your wife is with me. If you want to ask anything, hurry up and ask." When I heard it was my colleague Frank from the company, I was stunned on the spot. His words struck me like a bolt from the blue, delivering a heavy blow to my heart. How could this be? "Lina, quickly tell your husband how impressive I am." Unsure if it was my wife's aversion or her difficulty in speaking up, she did not respond. The next moment, I seemed to hear a crisp slap. Though it landed on my wife, the pain struck my heart. "Hurry up and say it, your husband is waiting." My wife seemed to be spurred on. In an instant, an unprecedented sense of humiliation made me change my attitude drastically. "Frank, if you have something to say it to me. Don't lay a hand on my wife, or I swear I'll kill you, believe it or not." Frank couldn't help but laugh twice. "You'd better fly over here. If time allows, you can even watch the show live, haha." "Frank, do you have the guts? If you do, let's have a one-on-one fight." Using a woman to threaten me, what kind of skill is that? I gritted my teeth in anger, my expression fierce, like a madman. I didn't threaten her. She's doing this voluntarily, okay. Frank was very smug, teasing my wife. "Your husband's losing it. No self-control at all, haha." "Honey, the wife stammered, looking somewhat torn and hesitant. I really couldn't listen, and I didn't want to. Before she could even respond, I decisively interrupted her. "Frank, you dog, if you lay a hand on my wife again, I will definitely kill you. I mean what I say." Unexpectedly, my words not only failed to have a deterrent effect, but somehow provoked him even more. I heard Frank suddenly slapping my wife, each sound sharper than the last. "Lina, you little enchantress, you should just be with me from now on. Look at your useless husband." All sorts of unbearable sounds shattered the last line of defense in my heart. Instinctively, I clenched my fists tightly and suddenly sat up from the bed. "Ethan, you're crazy." My wife was truly frightened by my actions and staggered back a few steps. I opened my drowsy eyes, and only when I saw my wife standing right in front of me did I wake up as if from a dream. "I just had a nightmare. I was waiting for you, but unexpectedly, I fell asleep while waiting." "I thought so. You really scared me." My wife placed her hand on her chest and closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. Clearly, I had frightened her quite badly. To soothe my wife, I quickly got out of bed and walked over, hugging her tightly. "Honey, when did you get back?" My wife rolled her eyes at me and pushed me away hard. "Are you blind?" "I just got home." I could feel her coldness, probably because I had fallen asleep and didn't go to pick her up. I took her coat and said earnestly, "You must be tired. Rest for a bit. I'll get you something to eat." My wife ignored me and, pulling her suitcase, headed straight to the bedroom. At this moment, my attention was not on my wife, but on the way she walked. I don't know why, but I always felt that her walking was strange tonight, a bit awkward. As for where exactly it was awkward, I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but it just felt a little off. Honestly, I've been a bit on edge lately, and combined with the huge psychological impact of the dream I just had, I couldn't help but feel a certain suspicion toward my wife. I went downstairs to buy some late-night snacks. Tonight, I had to drink a little first, to comfort my wife, and second, to calm myself down, since the pressure has been overwhelming lately. Some time ago, Frank and I had a disagreement over work. During a team-building event, after drinking, we got into a conflict. I have a quick temper and ended up beating him up in public. Unexpectedly, he backed down and didn't dare to fight back, only cursing at me and even threatening to go after my wife. In a fit of anger, I almost knocked out one of his teeth. At the time, I thought he was just speaking out of anger and didn't take it to heart. But I never expected that when my wife went on a business trip this time, I would have such an absurd dream. It seems that deep down, I do care about this quite a bit. Ultimately, it's because my wife is too beautiful. Not only does she have a delicate face, but she's also very good at dressing up. Every time, she styles herself in a very sexy way, making herself look like a sophisticated, commanding woman. Everyone else envied me greatly, saying that I hadn't just married a woman, but a goddess. At first, I was quite proud of myself, but later I realized that whether she was at work, out shopping, or even on a business trip, she always dressed extremely sexy. On top of that, she was very popular with men, which made me somewhat uneasy. Men, after all, like their wives to be devoted only to themselves and not to others. Naturally, I was no different. It was precisely because of this mindset that whenever my wife went out looking very beautiful, I always felt insecure, especially this time after she returned from a business trip. Returning upstairs, I heard the sound of water rushing from the bathroom. I put down the food and wine, listening to the sound of my wife showering inside, and suddenly a feeling arose within me, a feeling that drove me to the bathroom door. I had been holding back for several days, which was truly a torment for me. In my mind, there should definitely be some intimacy after drinking, but now that the feeling has come, I don't want to wait any longer. I was eager to rush in, but when I turned the doorknob, I was shocked to find that my wife had actually locked it from the inside. It's just the two of us at home, and she locks the door while showering. This unusual behavior left me puzzled. "Dear, open the door, I've brought back the food and drinks." His wife replied somewhat impatiently, "Didn't you hear I'm taking a shower? So what if you're showering? Why lock the door?" His wife neither opened the door nor responded further, choosing instead to remain silent. I listened to the sound of water showering inside, feeling uneasy. I recalled the way my wife walked just now, and now she was frantically washing inside, which made me even more suspicious. My wife continued washing inside for more than 20 minutes. While waiting, I opened a can of beer first and drank it alone. Finally, my wife came out. I waved at her, but she ignored me and directly turned to go to the bedroom. I thought she was going to change clothes, but after she went in, she never came out. Unable to contain my curiosity, I called out, "Lina, what are you doing? I've been waiting for you. Come on, let's get something done." "Do it yourself. I'm too tired and want to rest." My wife rejected my kindness. All right, my wife is neither proactive nor enthusiastic, which instead made me suspicious. Has she really been unfaithful? Thinking of this, I felt as if I had been hit hard again. Although there was no concrete evidence, my wife's various signs made me have to doubt. To be honest, if she has been unfaithful, I will definitely seek revenge. The next morning, after I finished washing up, I saw my wife still putting on makeup. She had been at it for a long time and still wasn't done. I couldn't wait any longer and asked her, "Are you going or not? If you don't leave soon, you'll be late." My wife calmly continued to fill in her eyebrows. "You go ahead first. No need to wait for me. We both work at the same company. My wife handles business affairs there, and we usually drive to and from work together." Seeing that it was almost time to leave, my wife remained so composed, which made me both anxious and confused. "Not waiting for me? Are you taking the subway?" "I'm not going on a business trip. I came back very late last night, so I can leave a bit later today. The company does have this policy. If you travel for work or work overtime too late, you can clock in later the next day." So, I didn't doubt my wife's explanation. "All right then, I'll head out first. See you at the company." My wife didn't respond. Her gaze was fixed on the mirror, not even glancing at me. Honestly, I'd rather she go to work without makeup than dress too provocatively. The more ordinary she looks, the better. But women naturally love to look beautiful. I've told her many times, but she never listens and continues to do as she pleases, always dressing herself up like a lady of the night. On the way to the company, I was driving while pondering. Logically, my wife could have gotten up later, stayed in bed for an extra hour or two, which would have been better. There was no need for her to get up at the usual time to wash up and put on makeup. Besides, since her makeup was already done, why not take the opportunity to leave with me and catch a ride? That just doesn't make sense. Thinking of this, a vague sense of unease suddenly stirred in my heart. I don't know why, but lately I've been feeling restless, even having wild thoughts, and it's happening more and more frequently. When we arrived at the company, the first thing we did was hold a morning meeting. This is a quirky rule of our company, and as for this quirky rule, it was proposed by Frank. Our company didn't have morning meetings before. There was only one regular meeting each week. But at a regular meeting last year, Frank was flattering the boss while talking about the benefits of having morning meetings. He said it could unify employees' thoughts, boost morale, strengthen team cohesion, and even help build the company culture. The boss thought it was a good idea and adopted it on the spot. I usually speak up actively at morning meetings, but at today's meeting, I was almost silent. The reason? I found out that Frank actually didn't show up. After the meeting, I stopped my colleague Jane and joked, "Jane, why didn't Frank come? He was the one who suggested the morning meeting, yet the guy himself didn't show up. Is that right?" Jane smiled at me and said, "Ethan, you don't know? Frank is on a business trip. He probably hasn't come back yet." He went on a business trip? How come I didn't know? I looked particularly surprised, not because Frank couldn't go on a business trip, but because the timing of his trip was off. He didn't tell you, right? I guess it's because last time at the team building, you hit him, ha ha ha. Jane picked up her laptop and left with a smile. My wife went on a business trip, and Frank also went on a business trip. Is this a coincidence? I was alone in the conference room, feeling disorganized, my mind buzzing with various doubts and question marks colliding inside my head. What leaves me speechless the most is that dream from last night. If I can stay calm after piecing all this information together, then my heart must be incredibly big. I didn't dare to think any further. Rubbing my temples hard, I felt like my head was about to explode. To calm myself down, I decided to go downstairs for a smoke. What a coincidence! Just as I reached the elevator entrance, the elevator doors opened and Frank walked out facing me, with Lina following closely behind. Being already extremely sensitive, seeing the scene of my wife and Frank appearing together, my entire nerves instantly tensed up. Frank was momentarily stunned when he saw me, then changed his expression and greeted me with a smile. "Ethan, where are you off to?" Because we had a fight before, and on top of that, the man in my dream last night caused me tremendous emotional trauma. The more I looked at him, the more I disliked him, and I didn't even bother to pay attention to him anymore. "Why are you still keeping that stern face? Who pissed you off?" Frank laughed even more heartily. "Someone suggested having an early meeting, but he didn't show up." "That's so damn annoying, don't you think?" I couldn't help but sarcastically remark. If we weren't at work, I really wanted to punch him. "Oh, right, I was on a business trip and got back too late last night, so it's understandable. Totally understandable, huh?" When Frank said this, he subconsciously glanced at my wife, then flashed a sly grin. I originally wanted to stop my wife and question her, but she calmly walked around me without a word. Watching the two of them walk into the company one after the other, a question popped into my mind. Could my wife and that grandson have come together? Otherwise, why did my wife insist that I go ahead alone at that time? Also, what happened after I left? Some things I really dare not think about. The more I think, the angrier I get, to the point that even smoking downstairs has lost its appeal. I tried hard not to let my mind wander, but the more I tried to control it, the more intense the thoughts became. To some extent, I felt like I was about to go crazy. At lunch, I finally couldn't contain my curiosity and looked at my wife, saying, "Honey, Frank went on this business trip with you, right? Why did you suddenly think to ask that?" My wife looked surprised. Clearly, she didn't expect me to bring it up right away. I thought my wife would tell me directly, but instead, I was met with her counter-question. "Just tell me whether you went or not. Didn't they say at the elevator that it was a business trip?" "I'm asking you." I put down my chopsticks and looked her straight in the eye. My wife hesitated for a moment, then lowered her head and said, "I don't know. Whether he goes on a business trip or not has nothing to do with me." I felt like my wife was brushing me off, so I kept asking, "Aren't you going together?" My wife just kept her head down, eating without looking up. "He's in your department, not mine. Honestly, I don't know why you're asking this. Are you out of your mind?" I was at a loss for words. My wife's response left me unsure how to reply. Knowing her, if I kept asking, she would probably get angry. After all, this was right downstairs from the company, and I didn't want to argue with her, lest a colleague catch us and have a good laugh. I picked up my chopsticks again and ate thoughtfully. Before long, my wife's phone rang. After a few simple ahas, she got up and said, "I'm not eating anymore. A colleague is calling me to go shopping at the mall. I'm off." Distrusting my wife, I lost my appetite too and secretly followed her out. It would have been fine if I hadn't followed, but now that I have, it's over. Our company is located in the business district, and right downstairs is a large shopping mall with all kinds of brands. For people working nearby, it's enough to browse after lunch, but my wife didn't go inside. Instead, she walked straight to the traffic light intersection. I don't know if she sensed something, but as she was walking, she suddenly stopped and instinctively glanced back. Fortunately, I didn't rush out the door. It would have been troublesome if she had noticed me. Just as I expected, she wasn't going shopping at all, because I saw with my own eyes that after she crossed the intersection, she headed straight towards the hotel. Saying she was going shopping was clearly just an excuse to book a room. Instinctively, I took out my phone, zoomed in, and secretly took photos. These would be key evidence for my future revenge. However, this wasn't even the most infuriating part. What infuriated me the most was that when my wife walked to the hotel entrance in her high heels, Frank actually came out from inside. I saw him smiling as he approached my wife, whispered a few words to her, and then the two of them quickly walked into the lobby together. Seeing this scene, my inner world collapsed. I never imagined that my wife would get involved with my archenemy. When did my wife become this kind of woman? I originally wanted to rush over and fight them to the death, but for some unknown reason, I felt as if something had pinned me down, unable to take a step forward. I could only stare blankly in the direction of the hotel, my thoughts tangled and chaotic. After a long while, I finally calmed down, then returned to the company in a daze. After returning to the company, I had no mood to work. My mind was entirely on my wife, so I was always restless, occasionally staring blankly out the window. When my wife came back, she happened to be with Frank, both of them chatting and laughing like lovers. I see it with my own eyes, and the pain is in my heart. Recently, when my wife is with me, she is as cold as a mountain, but when she is with Frank, she is passionate like fire. The contrast is like two completely different people. If I weren't at work, I would have confronted my wife immediately, asking her why she betrayed me and why she chose that jerk Frank. But in the end, I held back. After all, this is not something honorable. If the whole company found out, how could I face staying here? Until after work, before even leaving the parking lot, I found myself confronting my wife in the car. "You've been getting pretty close to Frank lately. Since when did you two become so good?" My wife rolled her eyes at me. "Ethan, what do you mean?" "Nothing. I'm just asking, is that not allowed?" I pretended to be casual, but inside I was burning with jealousy, like a spilled jar of vinegar. My wife pulled down her makeup mirror and said impatiently, "You asked at lunch, and now you're asking again after work. When will you stop? Why do I keep asking? Isn't it because I feel like something is going on between you two?" Hearing my words, my wife was furious. "Ethan, what exactly do you mean?" "What do I mean? Do I really have to spell it out?" I could no longer stay calm and looked at my wife with suspicion. "You doubt me?" My wife seemed to deliberately avoid my gaze as she said this. If this isn't guilt, then what is? It's obvious she has something to hide. "I'm not doubting you. I'm doubting both of you." I didn't want to hold back anymore. After all, I had the evidence in my hands. My wife snapped her makeup mirror shut, quickly unbuckled her seatbelt, and said, "Are you crazy? I'm done with this." Seeing my wife about to get out of the car, I sneered. "What, going to find Frank to book a room again? Haven't you had enough fun at noon?" My wife turned pale with anger and shouted at me furiously, "You're simply crazy, beyond saving." Did I hit a nerve? "I love you so much, so why do you betray me? Even if you have to betray me, why with Frank? What does he have that's better than me? I really can't understand it." "Ethan, don't slander me without evidence. Don't talk nonsense. You're really sick, and seriously so." After scolding me, my wife got out of the car and slammed the door as she left. My wife's departure left me speechless. Considering she might not come home all night because of this, I was even more upset. I slammed my hand on the steering wheel and then cursed. I didn't return home, but drove straight to my father-in-law and mother-in-law's house. Since I didn't give any prior notice, my sudden arrival surprised my mother-in-law, who was busy in the kitchen. My father-in-law was in the living room, playing with my brother-in-law's child. When he heard my mother-in-law's words, he just glanced at me without saying anything. "Dad, Mom, didn't Lina come?" I asked, looking around anxiously, pretending to be very worried. My mother-in-law shook her head. "She didn't come. I was wondering why you came alone." No need to ask, the couple must have had another fight. My father-in-law's donkey-like face immediately darkened. He had never thought highly of me as a so-called son-in-law, so he rarely showed me any kindness. I neither admitted nor refuted it. After sitting on the sofa, I chose to remain silent and said no more. Compared to my father-in-law, my mother-in-law was more reasonable. She sat down beside me and said kindly, "A couple can't keep arguing all the time. How can life go on like that?" "So, what was the argument about this time?" My father-in-law was displeased to see my mother-in-law being so gentle with me. He snorted angrily and interrupted, "What else could it be? She must be complaining about our daughter again. I didn't like what my father-in-law said. Before this, I had never looked down on Lina. Him slapping that label on me right away was probably just because I had argued with Lina here last time. Actually, it was a misunderstanding. At the time, I just said that my wife was going to her parents' house and didn't need to dress up fancy at all. But my wife wasn't happy about it. After a few bickering words, she still wouldn't let it go. As a result, I scolded her, which unexpectedly made her really angry, and it almost led to a fight between us. It was precisely because of that untimely quarrel that I offended my father-in-law, and since then, he has never shown me a friendly face. Tonight was no different. However, I didn't care about any of that because my sudden visit had only one purpose: to demand an explanation from them. No, Mom and Dad, the reason we quarreled this time is because Lina, she cheated. I didn't beat around the bush and laid bare my wife's betrayal. Both my father-in-law and mother-in-law are educated people, especially my father-in-law, who is a psychology teacher by profession and quite an intellectual. He is very traditional about matters like this and definitely found it hard to accept that his daughter would do such a thing. However, to my surprise, my father-in-law and mother-in-law showed no reaction after hearing this, especially my father-in-law, who seemed calm and unperturbed, which made me feel quite awkward. Dad, Mom, Lina has wronged me. Don't you have anything to say? I wanted to confirm once again whether they had misheard or simply hadn't processed what I said. My mother-in-law glanced at my father-in-law and was the first to speak. Ethan, we know better than you what kind of person Xiaoyi is. Don't let your imagination run wild. There's nothing to it. You kid don't even know what's going on, always making up these baseless things all day long. Are you just bored with nothing to do? My father-in-law didn't comfort me but instead scolded me. You should go see a doctor, you know that? I already knew they wouldn't believe me. Luckily, I had evidence. I took out my phone and was about to show them the photos I had taken when Lina suddenly pushed the door open. Seeing my wife arrive, I thought to myself that the timing was perfect, just right for a face-to-face confrontation. My wife didn't seem as surprised as I had imagined. It seemed she had anticipated that I would come here to cause a scene. You came pretty quickly, she said. I stood up and pulled her over, speaking angrily. You came just in time. I just told Mom and Dad, and they still didn't believe me. My wife was at a loss whether to laugh or cry upon hearing this. Ethan, this is something we should just talk about between the two of us. What are you doing causing a scene at my parents' place late at night? You're really crazy. Seeing that my wife showed no sign of remorse, I felt heartbroken, as if my heart was bleeding. What do you mean, what's going on? You're their daughter. You cheated, so I'm here to get an explanation from my parents. Isn't that only fair? Don't talk nonsense. If you lose your mind again, just get out, my wife said angrily, then gestured for me to leave. I turned my gaze to my father-in-law and mother-in-law, then showed them the photos I secretly took at noon. Dad, Mom, look at this as your good daughter. She skips work after lunch and goes to a hotel with someone else. She's truly shameless. I'm getting a divorce. My wife hesitated for a few seconds upon hearing this, as if she had figured something out. You, Ethan, you actually followed me? So what? Otherwise, how else would I catch you red-handed? I looked at my wife, both proud and furious. Which of yours saw me being unfaithful to you? My wife still refused to admit it. We both went to the hotel, okay? After looking at the photo, my father-in-law said nothing and left with my grandson. My mother-in-law looked at me, then turned her face to my daughter. Xiaoyi, what's going on? Is this really true? My wife shook her head and explained with a bitter smile, Mom, it's nothing. That person is our colleague. We just went there for a coffee. We didn't expect Ethan to follow and secretly take photos. It's actually a misunderstanding. I was speechless after hearing that. Going for coffee? There's a cafe right downstairs from our company, yet you insist on going to the Eastern Grand Hotel? And with a man, who would believe that? Lina, you can't even make up a decent excuse. Believe it or not, I don't care. Just get lost quickly. You annoy me just by being here. After saying this, my wife turned around and went straight to the bedroom, closing the door and not coming out. My mother-in-law hurriedly pulled me onto the sofa to calm me down. Ethan, calm down. Don't get angry so easily. After all, a couple has to live together. She already cheated. How can we keep living like this? Enough. I want a divorce. I shouted towards the bedroom where my wife was, like a madman. My wife still didn't respond, but my father-in-law came out from outside. He adjusted his reading glasses, tapped my head, and scolded, "Enough already. Better to divorce early. It's just an affair. Is it that serious? Do you think our Xiaoyi has no one else but you?" I thought my father-in-law was an intellectual with strong ethics, and that upon learning his daughter had an affair, he would harshly criticize her, poke at her backbone. But unexpectedly, the father and daughter always stood on the same side, united against me, which made me very angry. "Dad, are you even speaking like a human?" My mother-in-law, afraid the matter would escalate and attract the neighbors' attention, making it uncontrollable, only symbolically blamed my father-in-law a few times, then earnestly said to me, "Ethan, we're all family. We should get along peacefully. If this blows up, won't we just become the laughingstock of the neighborhood?" I wanted to argue with my father-in-law, but I couldn't go against my mother-in-law's good temper. "Mom, My mother-in-law looked very sympathetic. "You go back first. I'll talk to Xiaoyi. If she really did something wrong to you, I support you getting a divorce." "Mom, actually." All right, you go back first. Leave this to me. Xiaoyi has a temper like a firecracker, quick to ignite. Only I can handle her. Don't worry, I'll give you an explanation." Seeing my mother-in-law's sincerity, I felt too embarrassed to say anything more, so I just nodded and sighed as I left. Back at home, the more I thought about it, the angrier I became. Why is it that even though my wife cheated, my father-in-law doesn't blame his own daughter, but instead keeps targeting me? And he's a psychology teacher, a highly educated intellectual. I scoff, all hypocritical and self-righteous. Drinking alone in silence all night, I glanced at the time. It was nearly midnight, yet my wife still hadn't come back, which made me feel uneasy. Unable to resist, I picked up my phone and was about to start a voice call to my wife, but then I put it down again. On second thought, if I hadn't broken through this thin veil, there were still things I could say. Now that the veil is torn, I don't even know what to say to her. Looking at my wife's WeChat profile picture, so sexy, so stunning, anyone else would surely boast about it, but for some reason, my heart was filled with mixed emotions. A woman like this only makes me more uneasy. After downing another half bottle in one go, I happened to notice a change in my wife's WeChat status. She had actually changed it to something flirtatious. Restlessly, I subconsciously opened her WeChat and saw that my wife had posted a moment's update, feeling down, going out for a little fun. The picture was a sexy selfie of my wife, taken inside a bar in a tall building. Through the window, you could clearly see the CBD night view, especially the towering China World Trade Center tower and the tallest skyscraper. In the dead of night, my wife actually didn't come home, but went out drinking instead. The next moment, I pulled up Frank's WeChat and opened his moments. Sure enough, that bastard had posted too. What angered me most wasn't his ugly face, but the fact that he deliberately attached the location under the photo Byway Grand Hotel. Damn, this bastard doesn't look all that great, but he lives a carefree and happy life every day. I suddenly thought of something and immediately checked this hotel, discovering that the 65th floor of this luxurious high-end hotel is actually a bar. Among the hotel's promotional pictures, there are several night views of the CBD, which are almost identical to the background in the photos with my wife. Oh my God, this couple is such a pair of fools. My inner world collapsed once again. After enduring the pain and reflecting deeply, a malicious thought unlike any before surfaced in my mind. I decided to take revenge on this couple of dogs. A sleepless night. The next day, I didn't even wash up. With my hair messy and unkempt, I went straight to the company. I used to be a man who cared about face, but the matter between my wife and Frank hit me too hard. She chose someone else. I confronted her fiercely, then chose to divorce. But she deliberately picked my archenemy. As for that dog Frank, I must take him down, or I won't be able to swallow this bitter pill. When I got to the company, I was too lazy to attend the morning meeting, my mind solely focused on waiting for Frank to come so I could settle the score with him. Just like yesterday morning, Frank and my wife appeared in the elevator at the same time again. If I could tolerate the scene yesterday, today I really can't stand it anymore. Frank, you finally showed up. I've been waiting for you for a long time. I rushed over and punched Frank right in the face with surprising force. Seeing this, my wife panicked on the spot. Ethan, you're crazy. What are you doing? What do you mean, what am I doing? I just want to beat that son of a bitch. After saying that, I rushed to Frank again, pinned him against the wall, and punched him hard once more. Frank never expected it to end like this. Just after arriving, he suddenly took 2 punches. He couldn't believe the me in front of him, like a complete madman, brainless, attacking right away. Ethan, let's talk if there's something to say. Don't start fighting. This is the company. Aren't you afraid of being laughed at? I grabbed Frank by the neck, tightening my grip gradually, wishing I could choke him to death. You damn bastard slept with my wife, and you still don't want me to hit you? What kind of logic is that? I'll kill you. Frank wasn't someone to be taken lightly either. Broad and bulky like a bear, he broke free in no time, and then fiercely wrestled with me. We fought all the way from the elevator to the company. To vent my anger, I didn't care about anything else, no damn executive status, no future top-level successor. I didn't care about these empty titles, nor was I afraid of being laughed at by colleagues. I only wanted to fight this damn couple to the death. Ethan, stop hitting, stop hitting. If you keep going, someone will get seriously hurt. Jane was trying to mediate beside us, seeing me going all out on Frank. She was so anxious, she kept stomping her feet. I took advantage of Frank's distraction and punched him in the nose. Frank, last time I hit you, you didn't learn a thing. This time, watch me finish you off. Ethan, have you lost your mind? Stop right now, or I'll call the police. Lina saw that I had made Frank's nose bleed and had no choice but to threaten me with the police. I saw that my wife completely disregarded my feelings, elbowing outward, and my heart ached beyond words. I see you don't mind making a big deal out of this. Go ahead, report it. The bigger the fuss, the better. You might as well call the reporters, expose you both online, so everyone can see the true faces of you 2 dog-like lovers. You're truly beyond cure. With you like this, you'd be better off dead, my wife said angrily, then turned and walked away. Not long after, I heard the sound of police sirens downstairs. Ethan, the police are here. If you have the guts, try hitting me again and see if they don't take you away. Before Frank could finish speaking, I kicked out again with a flying kick. Everyone heard it. He told me to hit him. I have to fulfill his wish. The crowd watching all laughed. You bastard! Frank shouted at me, pointing his finger. No matter what, he felt embarrassed about this matter and wished he could find a hole to crawl into. After the police arrived, they first stopped us, then began to understand the situation on the spot, asking questions and taking statements. Because the situation was special and not a random fight, they actively mediated between us, urging us to calm down and preferably reconcile. I was still furious and unwilling to accept a reconciliation. Even if I went in, I would drag Frank down with me. Even if it meant both of us getting hurt, I didn't care. He slept with my wife. How am I supposed to reconcile? Should I even ask him for a couple of lousy bucks? What would that make me? Frank slammed the table. You have no solid evidence. Don't talk nonsense, or I'll sue you for defamation. Fine, evidence, huh? You think I don't have any? I said, pulling out my phone and showing the secretly taken photos. Frank looked at them and was both amused and helpless. I thought it would be some kind of evidence, but this can count as evidence? As the saying goes, to catch a thief you need the stolen goods, to catch a cheater you need proof of both. You just took a few background shots of me and Lina, and you suspect I slept with your wife? That's hilarious. Everyone went to the hotel. Are you telling me it was just a chat? I angrily waved my fists, wanting to hit him again. The police stopped me. No more fighting, or the consequences will be serious. Frank saw me acting like a madman and smiled. We just went for a coffee. You took it seriously. Frank, do you think I would believe your nonsense? There are 2 places right downstairs from the company. Why would you go so far? Your excuse just doesn't hold up. So what? I have a Costa membership card, and there's a Costa right on the first floor of the Oriental Grand Hotel. Got it? I felt like I was hit on the head, stammering my lips, completely at a loss for how to respond. By the way, what about last night? You all went to a hotel in the CBD last night. How do you explain that? Which eye did you see that with? Without solid evidence, you'd better not talk nonsense. If it weren't for considering our colleague relationship, I would really sue you for defamation. Don't think I don't dare. Both of you posted on Moments last night, both at the same place, with the background at Byway Hotel. Let's see how you explain that. My wife was speechless after hearing me. Ethan, I think you're really sick. Do you have some kind of delusional disorder? You see everything and jump to conclusions. Byway is a trendy hotel. I was in a bad mood and went there for a walk, had a drink, checked in. What's wrong with that? Stop making excuses. Do you think I would believe you? Lina, I could forgive you for betraying me, but I didn't expect you to play around like this. Impressive. My wife thought I was being unreasonable and was too lazy to argue. You really don't care about losing face. Do whatever you want. Say whatever you want. Even if I did betray you, we can just get a divorce. I've had enough of you a long time ago. You want to divorce me so soon? Just to be with him earlier, right? I just don't understand. What does he have that's better than me? He's better than you in every way, all right? Happy now? My wife said, then stormed off in anger. It was as if I had been provoked by something, and then suddenly burst out laughing. Not bad. Frank, I didn't expect you, a dog, to actually be better than me. Who are you insulting? Frank, having been scolded, naturally couldn't sit still. Who else could I be insulting? Of course, I'm insulting a dog. As soon as I finished speaking, Frank lunged at me like a mad dog, swinging his turtle fists wildly. Absurdly, the 2 of us started fighting again right in front of the police. Perhaps out of a desire for revenge, I didn't care about my colleague's face at all, nor did I show any mercy. Seeing the situation, the police knew mediation was hopeless and had no choice but to take us back to the station. Maybe I was too harsh. At the station, Frank's attitude changed drastically. He insisted that I was the one who started the fight, hitting him until his nose bled and almost knocking out his front tooth, demanding compensation for emotional damages. I laughed, slept with my wife, and he still wanted me to give him money? No way, I'd rather spend a few days inside. Just like that, I was detained for 5 days and fined 1,000 yuan. That afternoon, when I got out, I went straight back to the company and happened to run into Frank downstairs. He was carrying a bunch of stuff, and the moment he saw me, he froze. I still harbored resentment in my heart and didn't want to deal with him. I just wanted to walk around him because I was afraid I wouldn't be able to resist hitting that son of a bitch again. In the end, he blocked my way and said to me sarcastically, "Oh, you're out." Obviously, if I weren't out, would I still be inside celebrating the new year? Frank put down what he was holding and, unusually, handed me a cigarette. Ethan, I just don't get it. Why are you always picking on me? We're brothers from the same department. You fucking slept with my wife, and you still have the nerve to call yourself my brother? Our business isn't over yet. As long as I'm in this company, I'll make your life hell every day. Just wait. Frank gave a bitter smile. I'm afraid you won't get that chance. Look at me, carrying all these bags. Are you scared I'll come after you, so you're leaving early? Frank took a deep drag of his cigarette and blew the smoke in my face. The boss is still on your side, huh? Look, he fired me. You must be happy now. What? I looked at him in surprise, and seeing the helpless look on his face, my heart softened involuntarily. Ethan, that time during the team building when you hit me, I really held a grudge against you and always wanted to find a chance to get back at you, but no matter how much I planned, in the end, I didn't expect to miscalculate. What the hell are you talking about? I don't understand a word. Frank sighed. I didn't expect your wife Lina to be so scheming. Huh. I was completely confused. Frank looked utterly defeated. Forget it, in this game, we're all losers. I accept it. Frank, damn it, tell me, what the hell do you mean by this? Frank stubbed out his cigarette, picked up the thing he had placed on the ground, turned around, took a few steps, then stopped, looking hesitant to speak. Frank, what exactly do you want to say? He shook his head, then sneered. Ethan, have you ever considered that what you see might not be the truth? Or, what you saw was deliberately shown to you by someone else? I was completely confused, having no idea what this guy was talking about. Damn, what the hell does that mean? Frank didn't explain further and just walked away without looking back. I stood there, thinking for a long time but couldn't come up with any conclusion. Maybe this guy did it on purpose, planting a trap before leaving, making me feel uneasy every day from now on. So mean. This is also a form of revenge, I suppose. I arrived at the company, barely settled into my seat when I saw Boss Lou coming. The boss seemed like a very easygoing person at first glance. From what I know about him, he would definitely come to comfort me since I was wronged. Instead, the boss simply gestured to me and called me into the meeting room. As soon as I entered the meeting room, I saw my wife was also inside. I had been detained for a few days, and she hadn't come to visit me. I'm sure she must be extremely disappointed in me. But she doesn't understand. The reason I got into the fight was all because of her. Old AI, you've been with the company a long time, yet you just start beating someone up without knowing the facts. Frank is also one of my key men. Do you have any respect for the law? The boss sat down and unleashed a harsh tirade at me, showing no mercy. I'm a subordinate, naturally beneath the boss, and feeling guilty, I didn't know how to explain. Boss, do you know how much impact your outburst has had on the company? Do you think this is your home? So many people are watching and laughing at us. And you're still a senior executive, how can you have no awareness at all? How am I supposed to lead this company from now on? Tell me. I've followed him for so many years, and I've never seen him so angry before. This caught me completely off guard. Boss, I was indeed too impulsive that day. I was wrong. Just saying you're sorry isn't enough. Do you know? I fired Frank. I pretended not to know and stayed silent. If this had happened before, I would have welcomed Frank being fired by the boss, but for some reason, now that Frank is gone, I can't feel happy about it. The boss turned his gaze to my wife. Lina, after something like this, I think you shouldn't stay here anymore. Who knows how many people are stabbing you in the back? I understand, boss. I was just thinking of taking some time off anyway. The boss nodded, and then, take a good rest and adjust yourself. Thank you, boss. My wife knew what to do, and after saying this, she got up and left on her own. The office suddenly fell silent. The boss didn't say a word either, his fingers resting on the table, lightly tapping. I seemed to hear my own heartbeat. At that moment, I knew what the boss was waiting for. After a moment of thought, I took the initiative to resign. Boss, I'd like to apply for resignation too. After this incident, I have no face to stay in the company. Regret it? I smiled bitterly and said, this is the price of impulsiveness, and I suppose it's a punishment for myself. So, what are your plans next? Looking for a job again, or starting a business? I haven't decided yet. I'll just take it one step at a time. All right, if you decide to start a business and need funding, you can come to me. Thank you, boss. The boss's expression finally relaxed a bit. He patted my shoulder and said, no need to be so polite. You've been with me for so long, we're brothers. It's only right. We exchanged a smile. No matter what, the boss was fairly decent. It was worth all the hard work I had put in for him over the years. After work, my wife didn't want to go home with me. She sent me a message saying she was waiting for me downstairs at Starbucks. I didn't even have to guess. I already knew what she wanted to talk about. Sure enough, as soon as I arrived at Starbucks, she got straight to the point and said, "Ethan, let's get a divorce." Perhaps because I was mentally prepared, I appeared calmer than she expected. All right. Seeing me so composed, my wife became even more conflicted. "Actually, I don't want a divorce either, but your assault and detention my dad really minds, and having a criminal record will affect the kids, so I'm only under administrative detention. It shouldn't affect future generations, right?" Regarding these things, his wife no longer cared. "Anyway, you want to divorce me, and now we're on the same page. We don't have children yet, so divorce will actually be simpler." Indeed. Who will draft the divorce agreement? Since the divorce is already decided, I no longer care about all those so-called details. Whatever, anything is fine. Then I'll handle it. Also, there's a cooling-off period for divorces now, so I'll stay at my parents' place for this month. I nodded, okay. My wife saw the indifference on my face and felt somewhat uncomfortable. "Is there anything else you want to say?" I shook my head, no. My wife looked me up and down. "When you're normal, you're actually not unpleasant." I smiled, really. My wife didn't answer, grabbed her bag, and left Starbucks. I watched her back, not knowing why, but at this moment, I felt an indescribable emotion in my heart. Was it pain? Or regret? I had no answer. After the cooling-off period, my wife and I agreed to meet at the Civil Affairs Bureau to handle the divorce procedures. I deliberately changed into a white shirt and even wore a bow tie, just like when we took our wedding photos. Unexpectedly, my wife was also wearing a white shirt, paired with a very short black skirt, very professional, very white collar. We didn't communicate beforehand, yet on the day of the divorce, our attire was tacitly coordinated. How ironic. On second thought, it's quite fitting to start from where we began and to end there as well. The divorce proceedings went exceptionally smoothly. The moment I walked out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, I felt somewhat lost, but Lina looked calm and indifferent. Perhaps, for her, this was a kind of relief. As we were about to part ways, I suddenly felt reluctant. My lips were almost bitten through, but I forced myself to smile and said, "Since we were once husband and wife, how about a hug? This is the last chance." Lina had no intention, no thanks. I didn't insist further either. So resolute, that's the right attitude towards divorce. Don't look back, don't cling to the past. Let's each be well. Goodbye. To prevent my heart from breaking down again, I left first. After leaving the parking lot, I saw her still standing by the roadside, looking down and fiddling with her phone. I thought she was hailing a cab, so I instinctively honked as a farewell. Seeing that she didn't look up or respond, I knew that it was truly over between us. I pressed the accelerator and drove past her. Through the rearview mirror, I saw her figure gradually fading away, and my heart felt a pang of sadness. At the same time, the image of the first time I met her flashed through my mind. She walked out of the elevator in the cultural building, dressed in a sexy professional outfit, with a fair complexion, toned long legs, and flowing beautiful hair that truly captivated me. I don't know if it was the haunting memories or not wanting to regret, but halfway through driving, I developed an obsession, really wanting to turn back and take another look at her. Honestly, I admit it, I was being pathetic. I took another round. However, as the car was about to reach the Civil Affairs Bureau, I regretted it. There was no other reason. I saw Lina walking gracefully to the roadside, slipping into a Panamera with a charming demeanor. That was exactly the car of my former boss. At this moment, I seemed to understand something. A sexy and beautiful wife, a father-in-law who studies psychology, a kind and considerate mother-in-law, the bizarre and foolish Frank, the shrewd boss seemingly unrelated, but when connected, it's a chilling conspiracy that sends shivers down the spine. Thinking of this, I suddenly burst into uncontrollable laughter. Immediately, I pressed the accelerator, and the car began to speed wildly. That adrenaline rush I had never felt before was driving me forward relentlessly. Yes, I've lost my mind again.